On this episode of Life After Kin, I interviewed Eric Richard. Eric holds a 4-year Bachelor of Science degree in Kinesiology from Dalhousie University and a 2-year fast-track degree in Athletic Therapy from Mount Royal University in Calgary, Alberta. Eric now works as a certified athletic therapist out of Kempt Physiotherapy and CrossFit Ironstone located in Halifax. Listen as Eric explains what an athletic therapist does and his role in the injury prevention/rehabilitation continuum. Let's get into it. What sparked your interest in studying kinesiology to begin with?
I think it was like I've always had an interest in sports and health and wellness. When I was growing up, like most very young hockey players, I wanted to play in the NHL. And then over time, as you get older and you realize that you're on the A or B team when all the NHL hopefuls are on the AAA team, you realize that dream's not very realistic, like most kids. And I think I wanted to get involved with something that would help me be involved with hockey moving on into life and kind of professional sports. And I wanted to be involved with that still, without being a player. So then that kind of got me interested in kinesiology. And I was also at a hockey camp, and it was a hockey camp in the States, and there was a certified athletic trainer there, and he's basically, so a certified athletic trainer is the American equivalent of an athletic therapist. And then he kind of mentioned how kinesiology is a good start. And then I was about 14 at that time, and I was looking into it, and then it kind of went from there that I stayed sort of interested and eventually applied to Dal and got in when I was in grade 12. So then that's kind of how it started.
All right, and walk us through a bit of a timeline. So what year was that? When did you graduate high school? When did you start at Dal?
So I graduated high school from Cole Harbour High in 2013 and started at Dal the year after that. And I was kind of I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I knew that I still wanted to go sort of in the athletic therapy kind of direction. But the great thing about the first year of kin is that you're opened up to so many opportunities that you can kind of pick and choose where you want to head to. And then that was sort of still on my mind. And when I was in grade 12, before I even started at Dal, I had reached out to, because I knew the Chris Donnelly, the Dal hockey coach. I knew him from several camps that I did when I was playing hockey. So I kind of reached out to him and went to one of the games and met their training staff. So that was still on my mind that whole year. And then around the end of the first year is when they send out applications to be a student trainer and work for a team in the varsity setting. So when that came out, I applied to both Dal and St. Mary's, and ended up going with St. Mary's as a student trainer with their teams. And that's sort of where the whole thing kind of took off, I think.
Okay, so you did your undergraduate degree in 4 years?
Yeah, I graduated Dal in 2017. 2017,
okay. So let's walk through this whole certified athletic trainer business. So you did some volunteer work as a student trainer in your undergrad.
Yeah.
And then
4 years, 3 years, I think.
3 years,
yeah.
Okay. And so this certification, is it it's considered a professional designation, but is it an additional year of university, or is it just more or less based off of courses you've completed during undergrad and volunteer experience, or fill us in there?
So what athletic therapy used to be before it was, because it's technically an undergrad program, it used to be, so Kurt Stevenson is the head athletic therapist at St. Mary's. So he's been practicing for 20 to 25 odd years. So when he started, there was no program. It was basically you were a kin student and you kind of got a mentor who was already an athletic therapist and did a certain amount of hours with them, and then you challenged the exam. But now it's evolved into an actual undergrad program, and there are 7 to 8 schools in Canada that offer it, and they all offer it as undergrad degrees. But what you can do at most of them is you can do a general human kinetics kinesiology Bachelor of Science, and then you can go into athletic therapy after that and do basically a reduced, sort of an accelerated nursing program. So that's what I ended up doing at Mount Royal University. So I did my 4 years of kinesiology at Dal. I took a year off after that to work, and I think like mentally I wasn't quite ready to leave home yet. So I took that year off, and then the following year in 2018, I started at Mount Royal University in Calgary, and that is a 2-year program.
Was it primarily course-based? Was it a lot of volunteer work? Give us a little bit of a description there.
So it's basically Mount Royal and most other schools. I'm not sure what the other schools do, but at Mount Royal, they have their undergraduate of athletic therapy, or it's basically a Bachelor of Health and Physical Education with a major in athletic therapy. So it's an athletic therapy program and undergrad, which is that 4-year program. But every year they take, I believe, 10 post-grad students. So they call us post-grads, but we basically join their undergraduate class in the 3rd year. I think they do that because the first 2 years, in terms of their course load, are very, very similar to kinesiology. So it's like your basic anatomy, physiology, like care and prevention of injuries, I think. And then all the really specific athletic therapy stuff starts in the 3rd year. So that's where they get a practicum where they go to work with teams all around the city. So they basically start us there. So we go into it. Most of us already had some sort of like volunteer student trainer experience. So then that kind of helped us. But basically, like, we have the base knowledge from kinesiology to get a little bit more specific into it. And then you start right into, you have a practicum, which goes year round, and then your coursework is happening at the same time. So it's a little bit different than physiotherapy, where I know that physiotherapy, obviously it's a master's program, but they have, say, like a block of classes and then a block of like clinical orientations, and that kind of alternates. But with athletic therapy, you kind of do it both at the same time.
Okay, and just walk us through what athletic therapy is, because I feel like a lot of first year students are getting confused between, okay, well, you've got kinesiology, you've got physiotherapy, chiropractic, so now you've got athletic therapy. So what's the difference? What's the kind of within the scope of practice, and what can you do with that certification?
Yeah, so with athletic therapy, clinically, there's a lot of overlap between other professionals. But the scope of practice, there's basically there's pretty much 5 parts of the scope of practice, and those would be reconditioning, rehabilitation, emergency and acute care, prevention, and assessment. So clinically, you're still doing similar things to physiotherapists and chiropractors, in that you're assessing new and ongoing injuries. You're preparing a rehabilitation plan, reconditioning. So say they have like a surgery and you have to bring them through a rehab plan or a reconditioning plan to bring them back to being able to compete in their sport. So there's elements of rehabilitation from like a physiotherapy kind of standpoint. There's elements of conditioning, so from like a strength conditioning specialist standpoint. But the thing that kind of sets athletic therapy apart from the clinical professions are the emergency and acute care. So there are sport physios, but they do their physiotherapy degree, and then they can specialize as a sport physio. An athletic therapist will basically have their same kind of education right out of the gate. So with the emergency and acute care, basically, when we started our athletic therapy program at Mount Royal, and all the other schools do this, you do a first responder course, which is a pretty advanced first aid course. So it goes beyond just your CPR AED use. It goes into things like spinal boarding, administering oxygen. You know how to stabilize cervical spine injuries, and then it goes into prevention in terms of like taping, preparing athletes for competition. But yeah, so what really sets it apart is the emergency first responder part, where like a sport physio might have to take that course in order to become a sport physiotherapist. But with an athletic therapist, we have to have that to be certified. So we already have all of that emergency care training, like life-saving techniques. We basically already have that. So basically, I know like it's difficult to compare because with allied health professionals, physio, chiro, everyone kind of like has different schooling, but you might find an athletic therapist and a physio that treat very similarly, because like once everyone gets their certification, they can specialize in, they can take certain continuing education courses and kind of make their own sort of imprint in how they practice, and it might look the same profession. It's just kind of like starts at different things. So athletic therapists, like typically we do a lot of the same things that physiotherapists do. We might tend to work with more athletes, like more of an athletic population, but we can still treat members of the general public. And then in the field, it's a little bit more specifically driven towards working with teams and having that emergency care.
Right. So it sounds like there's a bit of like a medic component to this as well, like emergency, like you said, emergency first aid medic.
Yeah. So the first responder course it's definitely like it's not like a paramedic thing, but it's a very advanced first aid course that members of the general public generally don't have. So I would put it as like a couple levels below paramedicine. And I feel like there are a lot of athletic therapists that become paramedics because they kind of like, they think that they want to do athletic therapy, and then they come in and they see the emergency and acute care and they really like that stuff, and they don't really like the clinical rehabilitation side as much, so they might go into that world instead.
Okay, that makes sense. So what other certifications do you have? I'm noticing you've got CrossFit Level 1 posted on your Instagram channel. How have you been able to use that and incorporate that into your practice as you've kind of, now that you're back in Halifax and you're building up a clientele, how has your affiliation through a CrossFit box helped you build your workload, I guess?
I think it's that like the community and like around the like around Ironstone is really supportive of everyone, and like it becomes like pretty tightly knit. So like most people that knew me as a coach knew that I was going into this, and they were there when I left the gym. And like, so like when I come back, people like ask me like, how's school going? And now I can say like school's basically done and I'm certified, so that I can start to take advantage of having that community that was pretty supportive of me. Now knowing that I can treat and am working kind of in the same place. So I think in that terms of that, like the importance is like the training and the coaching ability definitely helps in like my practice, like understanding the movements of CrossFit and that sort of strength and conditioning realm, and being able to use that in my practice, not only as a way of prescribing exercise to someone who needs a rehabilitation program, but also like understanding the movements and what's required of a CrossFit athlete, and being able to employ that in actually treating them. Because people have a lot of value in a therapist that understands what they do. If, say, there's a CrossFit athlete that goes to just a general physiotherapist, they might know what CrossFit is, they might know what the movements are, but they might also not. So that's definitely helped me, like, understanding what goes into it so that I can help them better. I was going to say one other thing. So it's also just, like, in the connections that you make. So what I find, like, I've had success for is just, like, building a sense of community and just making personal connections with people so that they realize that they know that you have the training, but they also know you as a person. So I think that really helps a lot. And especially like in like today's economy in Nova Scotia, and like it can be hard to get jobs out here. So I find like what's helped me is just like making personal connections and basically like going back on them when I have something else to offer, and then it kind of builds from there.
That makes total sense. So in your role at Ironstone, are you an employee, or do you actually run your own business inside of Ironstone? How's that relationship work?
So it's kind of both. strangely. So I'm still an employee, and I still coach classes every now and then, and I can still do personal training. But my main affiliation or my main role is I am an athletic therapist that works for Kempt Physiotherapy, and they're right by the forum. And we have some connections between them and Ironstone, and a good partnership with the owner, Patrick. So basically we have a small satellite clinic set up at Ironstone. So there's a back room, and we have a bed in there now and several modalities and some other like exercise gear. So the partnership is basically like we can take Ironstone clients, and Ironstone clients can get referred from the coaches to have like physiotherapy, or vice versa. Like for a young Kempt patient who needs a lot of strengthening and strength conditioning work, we can now refer them towards Ironstone and kind of get them on the track to reconditioning their injury, but also being able to have them eventually become a member at Ironstone and join one of our programs to continue on with their progress. Because sometimes, like with an injury, like someone gets rehabilitated and reconditioned and they go back to their sport, but then they don't really continue to progress because they're what they think is better. But the thing about tissue healing is it does take a long time, like past the point of like, just because there's no pain, there still might be a lot of tissue damage in there that has to rebuild itself up. And that can take a lot of time. So the problem is if someone has a rehabilitation program and then they finish it and they get discharged and they don't do their exercises anymore, then they'll regret. So I think our goal is to, like, we can have someone and recondition them, put them through a rehab program at Kempt, get them into Ironstone, so we get them into a gym. While they're still one of our clients, they kind of see what else is available and what else is going on at Ironstone and the options that we have, and then they might progress into our strength program or some into our CrossFit program or like the balanced fitness program that we have. So I think it's advantageous for me because like I'm from both areas, so I'm well known in the gym, but I'm also really good at introducing people to that. So I think, yeah, so I'm an employee at Ironstone, but most of the time I'm an employee of Kempt Physiotherapy working with clients to kind of introduce them to that area, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I know I'm good friends with Mike and Anita just through this world as well. So to see how hard they've worked to kind of create this relationship and again, bringing Pat in and everyone connected, it's pretty cool. It's super progressive. And I don't think there's
cool that we're working on.
Yeah, I don't think anything like this exists elsewhere in the province, does it?
I don't think so. There might be, like I know out in Bridgewater at 902 Athletics, there's some physios that kind of work within there. And I know Blended Athletics has a good relationship with, I think it's Proactive, that clinic out in Burnside. So I know that they have a good relationship, and Blended Athletics also has like massage therapists and stuff within their gym, but I'm not sure if they have the same sort of like client, like physiotherapy or athletic therapy client conditioning programs that we do at Ironstone.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was referring to is your role specifically as a certified athletic therapist. Really neat.
Yeah. And I think
okay. Sorry.
Basically, like when I initially got into athletic therapy, like I wanted to work with like an NHL team or something, but then like I got involved with CrossFit and that sort of like training methodology, and I just really liked it a lot. So then I started working there, and I grew less interested in working with the pro team, mostly because I didn't want to really travel that much. So then it kind of like turned into like, would it be really cool to have a job in a gym where you can, like, you have basically all kinds of strength and conditioning tools right at your fingertips, so you can basically do what you want with a client, which is sometimes difficult to do in a clinic.
Right. So in the world of athletic therapy, who are some of the gurus? Who are some names or people that you could recommend for students to kind of do some Google searching, to look up, to maybe read up on?
I think I'll start locally at St. Mary's University. I was a student trainer there, and back then Chad Newhook was the head athletic therapist, and Kurt Stevenson was the assistant, but now Chad's kind of entering into like a retirement status of athletic therapist, but he still works in that clinic. So he's definitely a great person to reach out to. I feel like his email is probably chad.newhook@lifemark.ca because he now works for the Lifemark clinic that's at St. Mary's. But from Kurt and Chad at St. Mary's, I learned a lot, and I kind of like helped me when I entered athletic therapy because they've kind of got like the street smarts of it because they've been practicing for several years. So locally, like those two are great ones to reach out to like basically learn more and kind of see like what you can do with it and kind of like where to get started because they have a lot of connections just from being therapists for so long. Mark Lefebvre is a name from Mount Royal University, and if you go on to the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association website, go under their Becoming an Athletic Therapist tab, and it'll list the accredited institutions. So there's Concordia University, Camosun College, Sheridan College, York University, University of Manitoba, University of Winnipeg, Mount Royal University, and then Université of Trois-Rivières. I don't know, I have a problem saying that. So those all have names of like the department heads. For Mount Royal, it's Mark Lefebvre, and he's the department head and one of the professors there, and pretty much like he's won several awards over the years and has been an athletic therapist for quite some time, and has done a lot of research in the area. So he's a great one to reach out to if you're interested in Mount Royal, but also just athletic therapy in general. He was one of my professors and helped me through quite a difficult time during the program. So he's definitely very supportive of his students and would be a great knowledge base to reach out to. There's also like I know there's athletic therapists at Acadia University and St. FX that have some. So like most athletic therapists I think are great knowledge bases because they all kind of have like their own different path of becoming that, especially the ones that have been practicing for say 30 to 20 years. They're kind of like an old school style, like there was no program for it. They kind of like just did it as they went. They got a mentor and learned as they went, and that's kind of like I don't want to say like a rough way of doing it, but like a very old school way of doing it. So they kind of like learned through different ways that weren't basically like in a classroom. So they might have some more like practical experience to draw from, I think.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so let's kind of focus the conversation a little bit on these first-year students. For anyone who's interested in pursuing this certification or pathway to employment, what kind of advice or recommendations can you give specifically to these first-year students who are in the early stages of kind of thinking about this?
Right. So, like I remember, so when I was in Kin 1104, like the great class to kind of like open up your eyes to what the world of kinesiology offers. In terms of like advice, I'd say just like there's lots of volunteer opportunities, and it might not seem like they're very significant, but in terms of just like building relationships, especially like in Halifax, Nova Scotia, like the Nova Scotia area, what really got me ahead and gave me advantages was just making personal connections. So that started from like volunteering, like obviously like if you're interested in working with teams, Dal offers, like Dal has their athletic trainer program, St. Mary's, you can apply to be a student trainer. And then you can also work with King's College teams. So there's also volunteer opportunities outside the city. I had several friends that worked for, say, like a high school hockey team or something like that. Like in the classroom, you're going to learn like a lot of really important stuff, but it's also when you learn to apply it, like through volunteering or like getting your foot in the door somewhere, like it's gonna pay off eventually. The reason that I got hired at Kempt Physiotherapy is I started working there as a physio assistant, which in a basic sense is you're putting patients through the clinic, you're making sure that they get a room and that you clean the room after, and you're doing a lot of laundry for the clinic. And it might seem like really basic tasks, but I had that job and I got to know the therapist there really well, and I got to know Mike Connors really well. And then when I left, like, he was kind of interested in what athletic therapy was. So then we kind of stayed in contact, and now I'm working there as an athletic therapist. So I think a lot of it is it's making personal connections and just like getting your foot in the door and just working hard at something, even if it might not seem like it pays off that well right away. Like, I know with the student trainers at SMU and Dal, like, there's not really much, like, you might get a small honorarium at the end of the year, but there's not much money in it. But when you're doing something like that, like, you're not really in it for the money, because you're just gaining experience and you're gaining practical experience, even though you might not completely understand everything about what's going into it. Like, you're learning how to tape and you're getting good at that, and you're learning how to do like making quick decisions and staying in contact with players and coaches. So, and that can take you, I think, a long way, because if I didn't have that student trainer experience at St. Mary's, like, I probably wouldn't have got into athletic therapy, and I definitely wouldn't be as good or competent as I feel I am without that.
Yeah, that's a really, really great explanation. And right from the beginning, I'm always telling the students, like, regardless of where you want to end up after your undergraduate degree, volunteer experience is huge, not necessarily because of just putting it on paper, but the actual experiences and connections that they've made, just like you said. So that's amazing advice, and great to hear from someone who's kind of been in the trenches and kind of still there as well.
Yeah, I definitely feel I'm still in the trenches. But yeah, so like, and another thing that I kind of like gained from is just becoming a part of a community. Because like how I started coaching, like being like becoming a CrossFit coach, is that I joined Ironstone and spent a lot of time there and got to know the community really well and got involved. And then they recognized that I was a kinesiology student and might have had some qualities that I didn't even think I had to become a coach. And they kind of like invited me to do their coaching internship program. So I think what happened from that is just like getting involved in the community and just staying there, really.
Absolutely. So speaking of all that, kind of, again, you described where you were, where you've gone, now kind of where you're at in terms of professional career and whatnot. What's next for you? What do you envision kind of the long-term plan for you in this world?
I think in terms of an athletic therapist, I'm still building my client caseload. Since I sort of just got my provisional certification as an athletic therapist, because we haven't written the actual certification exam yet because of COVID complications. So they've allowed us to become provisionally certified, which means that we're certified athletic therapists, so we could do everything that a certified athletic therapist does, but we just have to report to a monitor every month, who's kind of like another like more experienced athletic therapist in the workforce that you can be mentored by. But you still have like your own caseload, your own client base. So I'm trying to build that right now. I think the goal is kind of like continuing the direction I'm going at Ironstone, and just like with young Kempt Physiotherapy, helping us build that sort of like sports medicine program that we're trying to build right now, that has the connections with like Ironstone strength conditioning. But it's also becoming something that we want to be able to present to, say, sports teams and offer them training and like field coverage for their sport. In terms of like the grand scheme of things, like I think I would definitely want to stay in Halifax long term and just become like a pretty well known resource for sports injuries to help people get better. I don't really have any like specific big goals other than just continue to build on what I've been building, because this has been my goal for so long. So like it's difficult when you when you're working towards a goal and then you get it and then someone asks you like, what's next? You're like, well, I don't really know because I just got here. So that's kind of like where I'm at, is I just want to build on what I'm building right now and then see where it goes. Like, I don't think I have any ambitions to to work with like a professional sports team. I would say like I'm still like, I would still consider like if like a job at the Mooseheads opened up, like I would consider that, or like a job at one of the universities, I would also consider that. But like right now, I just want to build what we're building and enjoy doing it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, you finally reached it. So why not embrace it? Why not build on it?
Yeah, and like personal goals, like I'd love to, settle down and get a dog too. So that's a big part of it.
Great. Okay, the next I've got just a couple of short little questions. It's a five question series, and it's specifically about the profession.
Yep.
So the first one asks about autonomy. So how would you rate the level of control you have over your work day? So for example, workload, start, end time, scheduling, all that good stuff. And so we're using kind of a five-star system where 5 would be complete control and 1 star would be little to none.
I would say in terms of my own autonomy, I have a high 4, I think. Just because say like if someone's a physiotherapist and they start a physiotherapy clinic, they might be given like sort of a caseload of patients just for insurance reasons. Like it's pretty easy to do that. But with athletic therapy, like it's not a very well-known profession in Nova Scotia. So that means that it's not as well covered by insurance companies. And like there are still, most insurance companies cover it, but it's still just not very well known. So in terms of my autonomy, my hustling and like kind of getting my name out there is completely on me. And then right now, like I have a lot of control over my own schedule just because I don't have a big client base yet. So I rate autonomy pretty high. It's also that I have I work for a great company, Youngstown Physiotherapy, that kind of like they definitely value like what I want to do. So I think I'm pretty lucky in that case. Yeah, so it's kind of like building my own kind of thing. So I would definitely rate autonomy pretty high.
You use the word hustle, which is pretty common in these interviews I'm having with different healthcare providers. So it's great to hear, though, that, again, now that you have a job, you still have to work hard to get clients through the door and money in pocket.
Yeah, and it's like I've kind of been I can definitely sometimes be one of those young person that, like young persons that's just kind of like glued to your phone. So I figured might as well put that to good use by like creating like a social media kind of outreach platform.
Yeah, no, it looks great. Okay, question number 2 is focused on satisfaction. So how likely are you to recommend the pursuit of being an athletic therapist to a group of first-year kin students? So again, 5 is absolutely, 1 would be nope. Keep thinking. Back to the drawing board.
I would say absolutely. Like I know I did just say that it's not a very well-known profession in Nova Scotia, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be a pretty well-known profession, because it's definitely growing. There are several Mount Royal graduates like myself that now work back in Nova Scotia. So there's one athletic therapist at St. FX and Acadia as well. And then there's one athletic therapist that kind of started his own fitness company and still treats clients through that out in East Hants. His name's Miles Coldwell. So I'd say like I would definitely go into it if it's something that you're interested in. What's neat about athletic therapy is it's a smaller profession and it's a little bit more specialized. So like if you know that you want to go into physiotherapy or something that you're treating athletes with, and you want to work with teams, like maybe athletic therapy is like has all those parts of that world kind of like all in one. So I'd say definitely go for it. I don't know about like the other schools. Like it was definitely a very difficult road, and lots of like things to be stressed about and setbacks. But I think with any program that is like a professional program, like it's going to push you and it's going to challenge you a lot. But I think that's for the best. So if you really put the work in, then like I would definitely say go for it.
Okay. And what about stress? So on average, how would you rate the direct level of stress that's encountered in your day-to-day when at work?
Right now, it's not very high because I don't have that many patients, but I'll base this on stress load that I had when I was an actual student. And as I said earlier in this interview, basically like when you're in the program, you are working with a team, so you're attending all their practices and games, or as many as you can outside of classes, and you also have clinical hours. So that can become a pretty high stress environment. If you're, say, working with one team, I don't know if it would be as bad, but say a position at a university can get pretty stressful. So I would definitely rate stress pretty high if you're a very busy athletic therapist. But that being said, there's lots of options to deal with the stress, and if you can kind of regulate yourself and know your boundaries, know your limits, then it would definitely be worth it. You might know that it's the stressful time, say for example at St. Mary's, when the football team's going, I know that that's a big stressful time because they're got hours of practice every day and a game every week to look forward to, and it's kind of it seems like you don't have any days off. But just like most things, things come in seasons. So if you can maximize your kind of relaxation and recovery outside of that, and then kind of keep a good eye out on yourself to take care of yourself when it's really busy, then it would definitely be worth it, and it would definitely pay off well, I think.
Okay. And in terms of growth, so how would you rate your opportunity for growth in this profession?
I think opportunity for growth in this profession is huge. Basically, because when you go through the program at any of the athletic therapy schools, you're growing a lot, because especially if you do the accelerated kind of version, like at Mount Royal, we called it the advanced certificate. You're getting a lot of information very quickly, and you're learning to apply it right away. So you grow a lot in the program itself, but when you graduate, you're at basically the most basic level of competency, because that's kind of what they're gauging. So that's how you would pass the program, is they deem that you have a basic level of competency. And so for athletic therapy, that's you have a good basic level of understanding and skill in the reconditioning and the rehabilitation, the emergency and acute care, assessment and prevention. But in terms of specializing, you have the very basic level of all of that. And in terms of room for growth, there's definitely going to be room for growth in kind of everything, because when you graduate and when you start working, you know that you know a lot of stuff, but the further you get and the more experience you get, you also recognize how much you don't know. And I think that's a really important thing to have. It'll give you a sense of humility as a therapist to you know how to treat things, but you also know that you have a lot more to learn, and that will kind of keep you grounded, I think. So yeah, so basically room for growth is huge.
Okay. And then last one here is creativity. So how would you rate your opportunity to creatively express yourself through your work? So that could come in terms of marketing or your approach to patient care.
Especially starting out for me, creativity is a big thing. Especially starting a social media page to start with. When I started, I didn't really have any color schemes or kind of artistic kind of stuff in the page, but having that will definitely help reach out to people and kind of catch people's eye. But in terms of creativity in doing the actual job, basically for our practical exams this past year, because of COVID, I think we had opportunity for the most creativity of any other exam, because our practical exam was done virtually, which is kind of strange. But basically, like you had to be at home and you had to have another person to use as like a body, but your professor and the person who was running the exam was on a Zoom call and they were speaking for the person that you are using as a body. And like, cause you're at home, like you might have some random stuff that you might have like a lacrosse ball or like some bands or stuff at home, if you're lucky. But basically like the opportunity for creativity was huge there because we could do anything that we wanted. And even if we had done the exams in person like they were supposed to be done, if you don't have an actual like piece of exercise equipment, you could like mime it out and like fake it, because they told us that we were basically supposed to act like we were in like a state-of-the-art facility that had everything you could ever want as a rehab specialist. So you could definitely use a lot of creativity there. And then that kind of teaches you, especially with like the COVID quarantine and lockdown, like some people might have had to find different ways to exercise that they might not have thought of before. And the same goes for therapists in telehealth. Like you're learning how to get someone doing a certain exercise if they don't have any equipment. So all of that has kind of opened the doors for creativity. And then like what I do is I like to use movement a lot as a way of treating and recognizing what someone might be doing wrong to help them get better. So then you can take, like I have my knowledge base from being a CrossFit coach and a strength conditioning, like having an interest in strength conditioning. So I can take that and apply it to my practice. Someone else might have like, say, like more interest in like massage stuff or like other experiences to draw from. So like when you're doing rehabilitation, like something that athletic therapy students struggle with is in rehab is that we think that there's like a one direction and like a one right answer, but that's very untrue in a lot of cases, because like if you have something that will be right for the patient, then it can work even though it might not be something very common. So there's kind of like, there's no right answer to what you can do as a rehab specialist, as long as you are working in terms of what the patient needs and you're basically keeping them safe.
Right. No, makes total sense. Okay. The last couple of questions here are more less structured around the profession and more about you and your interests. So the first one is, if you were a piece of fitness equipment, what would you be and why?
Oh, that's hard. Sometimes I would say dumbbells, but in the COVID quarantine, I had one dumbbell that I used, so I got really tired of it. So I don't want to say dumbbell anymore. I'd probably say a kettlebell, weirdly.
All right.
Mostly because you can do a lot of different things with a kettlebell. And it's kind of like its own niche sport now. I wanted to say barbell, but I know that lots of people would say barbell, so I don't want to go there.
The original.
Yeah.
Okay. If you had to select one professional sport team or sport body organization to work with, who would it be?
To be honest, I would say the AUS, I think. And I know that that's multiple sports, but I think there's definitely a huge value in varsity sports that doesn't always get recognized. Like, I think like university hockey is one of the best like leagues of hockey around to watch. And I know like the Halifax Mooseheads, like, and the Q, like they get a lot more of the recognition, but I find it's a lot more fun to watch because these guys are a little bit older, a little bit more mature than like the junior players. So I would love to work, like I'd say like university sports, also because the travel is not nearly as far as the NHL.
Right. No, man, that's an important part. Okay, and then the very last one here is with all that's going on in the world these days, and you've been in first year a couple times now, so you know what kind of transitions these students are going through. But with all the other restrictions and all the other stuff around COVID-19, what kind of advice can you give to first-year students in terms of getting through, keeping your head up, maintaining whatever?
So kind of like maintaining a positive mindset on the situation.
Yeah. What kind of advice can you give around that?
One thing that you've probably heard a lot is something that I also need to work on is stop looking at your phone so much. Because there's a lot of information out there that gets spread and like might make you feel a little bit anxious and like scared of the situation. But a lot of stuff on the internet is obviously not true. And it kind of dampens your ability to keep a positive mindset. So I would probably limit screen time. And also just like there's lots of things that we can still do. And there's lots of techniques that you can use to kind of calm yourself. So like there's lots of deep breathing techniques that you can find. And also just like keeping an eye on your goals, and like you might not be able to do something right now, but you can still work at it in any way that you can, and still move forward with that, even though it feels like, you know, the world's stopped. So I don't know if that was like a very specific thing, but those are kind of like my 2 bits. And like just keeping like a positive mindset. It might seem difficult, but to me, like I find that being stressed and worried or having negative opinions of things is kind of a waste of my time. So I try and avoid all of that.
Really great advice. All right, that's kind of it on my end. Did you have any questions for me or any kind of final comments you want to send out to the 1104 students?
No, like if you have any questions more specific about athletic therapy or want to know more on how to get involved, like my Instagram page is EricRich_CATC. I have an athletic therapy page on Facebook called Eric Richard Athletic Therapy. If you have any other questions, like just reach out to me.
Great. I'll make sure to tag you on any of these posts that I put online, and then students might be able to access you through social media if that works on your end.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Great, Eric. All right. Well, we'll end it there, and thanks again for your time.